evening, everyone. It's another Tuesday, and of course, on Tuesday at this time of the night, it's time for Sex Wise. My name is Amber. I'm going to be your host tonight, and my co-host is our friend Dr. Alveston Bailey. He's a family physician, adjunct associate professor in occupational health. Hello again, doctor.
It's really great to see you again. It's my second time, isn't it?
Great to see you again. And people, can I tell you, Dr. Bailey is all about, being professional, and you can tell that he's what we would call a top, because he has his logo shirt on, people. It says A. Bailey, and I didn't wear my DJ Amber t-shirt tonight.
You're too kind.
So I'm at least a rung behind.
Okay.
So welcome to all our listeners. Of course, we want to first say to you that you're all invited to join in the program later on. We're going to open the phone lines. You can also check us out on Facebook, IRFM Sexwise, and you can find me as well on social media and get your question or your comment in, because some people are shy of coming live on the radio, and so they might drop me a line inbox or even make a post. So on Facebook you can find Amber Irie Crowell, that's CROWL. Then on Instagram it's DJ Amber from Jamaica, and on Twitter it's DJ Amber IRFM. Doc, do you do any social media?
Not really. I'm sort of getting there.
Yes.
It's one of those youthful things that I'm having a little difficulty getting my head around. But it's obviously very important in this day and age to get involved.
It's not a youthful thing at all. Can I tell you, I recently saw a gentleman on Facebook, 80 years old, just receiving his bachelor's degree, and he has his page and he posts his picture with his degree and has on his graduation hat and everything, and I felt good for the guy. 80 years old, so it has nothing to do with age. So get yourself on social media.
I better start getting on it, and especially critical, because I wrote this book. Did I share a copy of the book?
No, but you promised me that you would bring me at least to see. Hopefully you'll give me one. But I remember us talking about this.
Yeah, well, I'm going to work in it for you.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting title. I was interested from the moment you said it, or actually I saw it on the script for the program. Sexplanations, people. So that's the book by Dr. Alveston Bailey. It has quite a few pages, 331.
Right.
Okay, so there's a lot to sexplain, and it's all here in Doc's book. Tonight, we're going to need to sexplain something. Our topic is pornography, a blessing or a curse.
Yeah, it's an interesting name. Joy has these weird words. She comes up with these spins, but it's a nice spin, because many persons are. We're going to explore all the pros and cons of pornography.
All right, so we're going to jump straight into it after reminding you of our phone numbers for your participation later on. You can call us up on 974-5051, 974-5079, and 974-5043. You can also call our toll-free number 1-888-991-4152. Now, first of all, Doc, let's define pornography. Pornography is printed or visual material containing the explicit description or display of sexual organs or activity intended to stimulate sexual excitement. And in this modern day and age, I'd also like to add audio.
Okay. The operative word really is that it excites the viewer. And just to add to the definition, it actually is derived from by or about words. And it was a name that was popular then, but it has remained with us and now has a lot of different meanings and has gone way ahead of just writing about ladies in that interesting profession.
And as I said earlier, audio, we're going to get into the different types now, types of pornography that we know about. There is of course the adult magazines. Those are very popular. There's also the videos / DVDs. You can get those original and bootleg pretty easy.
Yeah, indeed. In fact, they're just everywhere.
They're everywhere. There's cyber porn, which this one now it goes beyond our wildest dreams. Because, the internet provides so many different varied, audio and visual and print and, lots to do with pornography.
Yeah, and the new approach to internet porn is what we call cyber sex. So it has really taken off significantly. Interestingly, there's another way that one could actually describe the different types of porn. During my younger years, we used to be exposed to what is called soft porn.
Yes.
These were really women who were posing in pictures, in sensual and erotic poses, but essentially they were not overtly sexy. Right. And so those are called soft porn. But then you have now the hard porn, which really describe pictures or movies which show people actually having sex.
Right.
And there's also another kind of porn called hardcore porn, in which the sexual acts are actually violent. And one of the main reasons why we're going to have with us later tonight Dr. Sandra Knight is because of the change in scene with respect to porn and teenagers, right, and the possible impact it might have on their development. And then you have child pornography, which really is a biggie, which depicts any film or photo that shows children being used for sexual act. And of course, that's definitely illegal.
For sure.
And you mentioned already the internet pornography of cyber porn, which has now taken off seriously.
And then, as I said, the description I gave you is what is the basic description of porn. But I added audio and voice notes are a popular thing right now. You can listen to people having sex on the internet, and you can get it on your phone, you can download, or you can just listen. And it's like you said earlier, sex is all around.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that you describe video and audio porn, because the truth is most persons who are involved in sexual education and sexology will tell you that sex actually begins in the mind. And I actually watched a video recently that was done looking at the brain of a young woman who actually was masturbating. They wanted to determine what happens to the brain when a sexual event was taking place, and it was fireworks. Absolutely amazing stuff. I'll give you the website at the end of the program, because it started off with her brain just simply glowing, and then at the time of orgasm, it just exploded in fireworks. So you could actually see the lights in the brain. And so
as we move along, Doc, the idea of teenagers watching porn and being involved in sex acts is something quite common right now.
Yeah, it is. It is quite common and a bit worrisome. And there's a fairly good reason why it is worrisome. Because again, when one reflects on the sort of erotic literature and erotic movies that, with respect to group sex online, 83% of boys watched it and 57% of girls. With respect to same-sex intercourse, which is a matter that is viewed quite emotionally in Jamaica, in the States, and I have no reason to believe that that doesn't apply to our situation, 69% of boys and 55% of girls watch same-sex intercourse. With respect to bondage, and a classic example is bondage, domination, and sadomasochism. 39% of boys and 23% of girls watch bondage.
Wow. All right, those are some alarming numbers.
Absolutely alarming.
We are going to go to a quick break and come back. Stick around.
Condom save life, condom save choice, condom make us safe and feel the boys and know what sex. If a baby you want go do a test me if you know what go on. Danger! Rising representing for sex wise.
Hey, Tone Record. Alright, in the thing, friends, God. Danger. Cookie, may I ask a girl a question?
All right. You just heard from Assassin. That one is called Dirty Cartoon, Dr. Bailey.
Oh, really?
Yes. And
sounds quite graphic.
Very graphic. and I have watched cartoons and seen and heard inappropriate stuff for babies. Programs that are for babies, I have sat and watched because I have a toddler, and some of this stuff it's a little bit.
So the negative influence starts very early.
It starts very early. Now, Assassin was talking about the cartoons, the multitude of other programs that exist outside of the cartoons. Now that's
where the problem lies.
The problem lies there, and it attracts our teens. There is no doubt.
Absolutely. In fact, let me just give the listeners a feel as to why we are concerned here, because we were mentioning that a significant number of teenagers were watching not regular sex, which is called vanilla sex,
right?
But
or
they're
not
watching
just heterosexual,
not just heterosexual sex,
various types. But
they're watching group sex, same-sex sexual bondage, and interestingly, and this is what I find particularly worrisome in this survey done in the States, 32% of boys and 18% of girls are watching bestiality. And which is actually humans having sex with animals.
I spoke about that today.
Yep.
That was definitely a grave concern, because it seems like that is something that is picking up that people are interested to see.
There you are. And in this report in 2008, 32% of boys and 18% of girls were watching it. Now, with respect to sexual violence, 18% of boys and 10% of girls were actually watching sexual violence, which is rape, basically.
Wow.
And a small group were involved in child pornography, 15% of boys and 9% of girls. You notice that in all the statistics, the boys were way ahead of the girls.
Exactly.
And it indicates, therefore, that with the unlimited and easy access that teenagers have to erotic material online and in books and on DVDs and on cable, they are not only watching regular heterosexual activities, but they're watching other types of activities.
Some of which they had never heard about before.
Or seen.
Their parents don't educate them that these exist, and they pounce upon it on the internet or otherwise. Let's talk about some of the reasons why teens become exposed to porn. As we just said, they are actually not just exposed, but overexposed in the ways that we just mentioned, the different types of sex. Some of it they had never heard about before. By way of internet browsing, and a lot of the times being in unsupervised situations where there are no responsible adults to deter them from, either participating in sex acts, because watching it makes them aroused. So the possibilities exist that some sort of sexual activity can take place from watching porn.
Undoubtedly, and in fact, the commonest activity that persons who watch porn get involved with is actually masturbation or self-love.
Right. Okay, so we have that. And then there is the irresponsible parenting. Now, this takes me back to the numbers. As you said, most of the numbers all of the numbers that you just mentioned in the statistics for teens watching porn, the numbers were higher for boys.
Significantly
than
higher.
For girls. Do you think it's because boys tend to get more freedom from their parents?
As a rule, yes. And there's also another reason. Some persons might perhaps not agree, but the truth is that in terms of sexuality, men do tend to have a higher sex drive than women. They tend to be more visually aroused. Yes. And this is because of the presence of this particular male hormone called testosterone. And so you find that men tend to think of sex more often than women.
Certainly. I agree.
Oh, there you are.
Right.
And they're more visually aroused. And so they are more inclined to seek out erotic material to satisfy that visual need.
Can I say? I don't know about other places, but I'm going to talk for what I, as a woman, have experienced walking on the streets sometimes or just being out there. Jamaican men are all sexed up, most of them. It's in the mind all the time. When I walk on the road, I'm almost sure that if I pass 20 men, at least 10 of them are going to say something sexual to me. All right, so it's time for us to...
at least 10?
At least 10 or more.
Out of
20.
I'm not surprised.
Maybe 18.
I'm not surprised. 20. You're such a charming woman.
Thank you. Well, I don't think it's just that. I think sex is on the brain. And, I know sex is on our brain. You're listening to Sex Vibes, of course, right here on IRFM. And we mentioned earlier that we'd be joined by Dr. Knight. And Dr. Sandra Knight is now online, and we want to welcome her to the program.
Thank you.
Dr. Knight, welcome to...
Welcome.
Hi, how are you? It's been a while.
I'm doing very well.
Good to have you online. I actually invited you to join us because I glimpsed at an article in the newspaper in which you were quoted as arguing that pornography is having an adverse effect on the minds of our youngsters. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, there you are. I can't remember the article. Could you remind us of the nature of the discussion you had with the reporter?
Well, what we are researchers are finding out is that pornography and what we call sustained exposure to pornography actually causes the brain to underdevelop, and the hindbrain, which is the primitive brain, which is the part that is stimulated mostly during sexual intercourse, is actually very much developed. So we find that these boys...
just a moment, Dr. Knight. You have forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. So you have the one in the front, the middle, and the hind. This is the hindbrain and the primitive brain. And you're saying that based on the evidence that has been presented, the primitive brain is more developed than the
front or the middle brain.
Okay.
And so what we have young men who are more aggressive, of course, very, very, very sexually charged, unable to form healthy relationships with females because the only thing they see a female as is vagina, and so to have a conversation about anything else is difficult for such a young man. And of course, the fact that many of them develop what we call we all know ADD, attention deficit disorder, because even at work or at school or at college or university, they have difficulty concentrating because they're looking at a female in the class or the teacher, and it affects the way they are able to really concentrate in school. So it's a problem. It's a very big problem, actually.
Interesting, Dr. Knight. So you are arguing then that prolonged exposure to pornography activates the primitive brain. It grows and it causes younger men to become aggressive, develop attention deficit disorder, and even when they are not watching pornography, they view women in a negative way, and they're hypersexual. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they're hypersexual. I don't know if they view women in a negative way.
In a sexual way.
They just see that female as somebody else who they need to have sex with.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's really all they have on their minds.
Now, with respect to exposure, based on the data that you are privy to, what period of time would this exposure cover from, and when are these youngsters most vulnerable to this kind of influence?
Well, in Jamaica we have certain unfortunate situations where children as young as 2 years old are being exposed to pornography, because in certain communities, they are sold on disc, Everybody have a DVD player and they play it over and over and over again. Not only are they exposed to it on the DVD, but on the smartphone and actually in vivo, because they actually live in the same room that their mother or their father live in, and so they are exposed to it actually live and direct. But speaking directly to pornography, in Jamaica, kids as young as they're born actually, but they're not assimilated then, are surrounded by pornography. I mean, when we talk to children in the children's home, my Lord, a 5-year-old in the children's home, what they know and what they can tell you and what they say to you, it's like nothing. It's like nothing to them when they're
used to it.
Yeah.
And do they act out these scenes based
absolutely.
on? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes, because children live what they learn, and if this is what they're being exposed to, naturally they become curious. It's very sad indeed.
Yes, and they don't let me choose my word properly. They don't quite know better at that age, because that is exactly what they are exposed to. And so they are constantly being bombarded by not only sexual images on the smartphone or TV or whatever, but sexual images by other people, other children, adults, etc. And the bombardment is constant. Constant.
Okay, Dr. Ned, I just want you to clarify for the listeners, because you're saying that early exposure to sexual experiences and sexual stimuli, it does influence the development of the mind. And,
pornography. No, let's be specific. We're talking about pornography.
Yeah, I understand.
We're not talking about early exposure to sexual experiences.
Okay.
Because we can have children, little boys, they can have their little erections, and little girls can have little sensations in their clitoris, and they tell mommy, and we talk about it, because that's the situation that exists. We're talking about pornography in particular.
Okay, no problem. What the Family Planning Board is obviously quite concerned about this.
Extremely concerned.
What sort of advice would you like to give parents and caregivers about how to minimize this kind of exposure in order to at least allow children to enjoy their childhood?
Right.
In the first place, I would say that the attitude that many fathers have, that their boys should and must be exposed to pornography to make them a man, is not correct. It is very well known that if a child, a young male, is watching pornography, his father, across society, it's not a lower or middle income or high, across society, the boys should be watching pornography. But I'd like to just remind the fathers, and I say fathers in particular, because the mothers are shown not to be as allowing, that the boys are also exposed to male-on-male sex, which I know many fathers are concerned about. I'm not saying this to scare them, I'm just saying this to tell them the truth. So the pornography that they don't have a problem with, but the MSM or the male-on-male sex that they do have a problem with, they're exposing their children to it also. Number two, you just have to be extremely vigilant. We can't protect our children from everything, but we can have conversations with them about why we need to protect them, so that when they're not in our presence, they will be able to actually behave in the manner in which you have taught them to. Don't be afraid to monitor their Facebook pages. Don't be afraid to monitor their phones. Don't be afraid to monitor their computers. Check their computers. Put on limits on their computers. The TV channels, for example, as adults in the home, there's nothing wrong with having one or two channels where you have sexual content. But if your child is in the home, you have to ensure that you block those on the TV, so that when you are ready to watch as an adult with your consenting adult partner, you use the code and unblock it. Do not take it for granted that they're just playing games on those smartphones and on the pad. No, they are not. They are searching for naked women, naked men, naked women, and men having sex, and just about anything that catches their eyes. They are looking at it, and once they look at it once, I tell you, they're looking at it over and over again.
Okay, Dr. Knight, could you hold a moment for me? We're going to take a short break. We'll be
sure.
You can go ahead, Doc. You can complete what you wanted to say.
Okay, no problem. So you were saying that once they are titillated by the visual stimuli,
right,
that they become almost addicted to it.
Very, very difficult to stop them. It's a problem in the United States too, big problem in the United States. And let me tell you one of the things that the National Family Planning Board is concerned about. We are extremely concerned about the fact that families, and we're talking about nuclear families now, well, not in particular the nuclear family, but families where we have parents cohabiting with children, whether with other extended members or not. The choice that has been made and the sustainability of that choice is so low in Jamaica. Or divorce rates are increased. The fact that persons are not getting, the marriage rates have gone down. The formation of families in Jamaica have gone down significantly. We have girls who are choosing to have children for boys they don't even know, just because. We're having boys who are pressuring girls to have children for them, just because. And you say, well, what about marriage? Like, who? You know, they don't know anything. The society, we're so distorted that we just have not the thought of boy meet girl, getting to know girl, date girl, go home, and boy go home, boy or young man goes home and asks daddy for the hands of the young girl. And
you're betrothed, yes. Okay. Yeah, I can understand the dysfunctional families is contributing to this phenomenon. Right. Well, Dr. Knight, we're going to wrap up this call in just now. Could you just give us some take-home points that the listeners need to remember in order to prevent this kind of inappropriate exposure to pornography?
The number one thing I would say is, as parents, we need to be proactive. I know we are stressed. I know we are tired when we get home. I know that we have a lot on our mind, but we still have to be proactive. We still have to be vigilant with our children, because it's not only them alone, they are also being influenced by other children.
Yes.
And you also have to ensure that you are monitoring the friends that they keep. So if you have sleepovers, I have instances where I have a parent, a very uptown prep school had her daughter have a sleepover, and they spent the night watching pornography.
Wow.
But it was pornography for the big sister, and the little sister got it, and they spent the whole night watching pornography, and she went home the next day and I was telling her mom. So you have to be careful. If your child is going to spend time with another child, get to know the parents, get to know the child, get to know who these people are. There's nothing wrong in saying this, this is who I wish my child to be associated with, and I don't want my child to be associated with that person. Yeah, you have to make those type of choices, because you just don't know.
Yes.
You have to protect your children. You have to protect where they go, what they see, ensure that whatever these tablets that you're giving them, monitor them, and just be proactive parents, because that is exactly what we need to have, because the competition is stiff. The competition is stiff out there. Sexual images are on the billboards, or on the commercials, they're everywhere. The competition is stiff. But guess what? We have to compete anyhow, because that's what our children demand of us.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And of course, we wish you luck in your work. You have a very, very big job on your hands.
Thank you very much, Dr. Knight, and it's a pleasure having you with us tonight.
All right, so that was Dr. Knight from the National Family Planning. Oh, we forgot to ask her what's the new name.
It has incorporated HIV, but I can't recall. It's really a shame. But she's head of the National Family Planning Board.
All right, we're very glad to have had her, because actually a lot of the points she touched on, we are going to elaborate on a lot of it in the next few minutes as we continue on pornography and teens. So I had reached the point of discussing the irresponsible parenting that contributes to teenagers becoming exposed to pornography. And as the doctor said, I'll just elaborate a little more. Parents should educate teens on the negative and long-term effects of watching porn or participating in sex acts. Particularly tonight, we're talking about porn. So I'll just repeat for you. The doctor said that prolonged exposure to porn, it enhances the activity in the primitive brain.
Yes. That's the one that is responsible for basic primitive emotion, sleep, food, sex, thirst and so on. It's a part of the brain that drives us for survival. And she's arguing that the front of the brain, which is the area for rational thought, for reasoning, she's arguing that the constant stimulation that results from exposure to porn literally shuts down the front of the brain and can create problem in terms of behavior, including
ADD, which is a common behavioral disorder among children and teens. And it's a very frightening situation, especially just hearing from the doctor. She has her own personal interactions with children in these situations. We're going to come back with more. We're going to definitely touch some more on the topic of the parenting aspect of teenagers and pornography right after this break.
Hello?
Hey, girl, where you there?
I'm in the studio.
Hey, girl, where you do a studio? Come on, now.
Who you call, girl?
I said, come on, now.
You don't know overtreat a girl. You don't know overtreat a girl. I'm tired of the call.
Song epitomizes what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, indeed.
All of them dirty texts and pictures and videos.
It's actually it does now got a new word. It's called sexting.
Let's continue. It's right here. Okay. So before going to the break, we had started to touch on the point of the parents' responsibility in teenagers being exposed to porn. Just want to remind you, we have posed our Facebook question. It is, did you watch porn as a teen and how has it impacted your life? You can go on Facebook and go on Irie FM Sex-Wise, and then you can also share on my page, which is Amber Irie Crowell. And by next week, I'm going to make sure Dr. Bailey has his Facebook to share with us.
Absolutely. I'm going to start working on it as soon as the program is over.
All right, good. So you can link us up there and share your views or your questions. All right, so where the parents are concerned, Doc, it is their responsibility to educate the teens on the negative and long-term effects of watching porn, as we had explained earlier on and elaborated on what the doctor said. Also, parents should educate themselves. This is a big one. Parents need to educate themselves on the gadgets, like the games, the laptops, the tablets, and their functions, because a lot of the parents buy these things, to occupy the children, but they themselves don't have a working idea of how these things operate.
Dr. Knight mentioned something which is quite important, that you need to monitor phones, computers, and TVs. Mm-hmm. But I was looking at the data with respect to pornography, and the data from the States is quite interesting, because they found out that over 70% of the teenagers clear their history soon after watching porn.
Speaking of clearing the history, well, they know that they're doing something wrong when that happens.
Absolutely.
But a lot of the parents don't even know how to find the history.
Oh.
So that even if the children didn't clear it, they wouldn't be able to go then and see what their children had looked at before. So they need to be computer literate.
As part of parenting now, therefore, computer literacy is going to be a vital skill.
You need to be smartphone friendly, man. So that's one of the things that you need to get on with. So, you can check the history. Well, if they don't clear it, as clearly the statistics show, they've been doing that.
Yes.
All right. So, for example, now, Doc, if I should go online and just type in the word sex on Google, I did it today, and things like, any search engine you want to use, go Google, go Bing, any one of them, and some of the things that come up, believe me, will shock you. So, imagine the young mind that has never been exposed to anything sexual, the multitude and the variety that they have. So today we did it. I googled the word sex.
You just did it out of curiosity.
Yes.
That's the point that a lot of parents don't understand. When the Ministry of Education suggested that they were going to give tablets to schoolers, the first thing crossed my mind is the minister aware of what's going on?
How are they going to monitor that?
Is it going to be used for video games? Is it going to be used to
Is it going to be connected to the internet at all?
Yeah. So there are a lot of risks, because simply typing in the word sex
Listen.
expose you to the whole world?
Typing in the word sex today, here are some of the things that came up, Doc. There was sex poems,
Okay.
sex jokes, sex in church.
Oh, in church?
Yes.
Oh.
Sexting.
Okay.
Which, of course, we explained is a type of phone sex, the new type of phone sex. And if you should type in sex images, the words sex images or pornography, we did that as well today. This is what came up. For example, oral, anal,
Oh.
lesbian, homosexual,
Etc., etc.
etc., etc.
Which means that once you just type in these simple words, a whole world
A variety of things
pornography is
appear.
exposed.
Images and words. So it is quite alarming that, children can go on the internet and these things just come about. And of course, as you just mentioned, Doc, they know it is something that is wrong or something inappropriate for their age. So they're going to try to hide the fact that they have seen it. And as the Dr. Knight said, it's hard to stop them because they're going to go back and try to see a little more and see a little more. Very, very tricky situation.
Understandably. I mean, if a young man, say in his early teens, and he's overwhelmed with testosterone, if he sees these things, he's just going to stay there.
Yes.
I mean,
Very interested.
I mean, one has been there, and as a youngster, and if you see these images, they're going to grip you,
Right.
and all other matters that are critical to your development as a teenager is literally put on hold.
Exactly.
And so the point you made just now is a critical one, because a lot of parents buy computers for the youngsters, they buy these expensive smartphones, and they don't quite understand that these gadgets might be exposing their youngsters to a lot of images and visual stimuli that is inimical to their mental health.
Some parents are actually, Doc, outright oblivious to anything that happens on these devices. So it is a high risk, and I think our boys, as a matter of fact, are at more risk. Because as the doctor also said, boys are more sexual, so, they tend to be more interested, and our girls are also at risk, so it's really sad. Another thing that's affecting the rate at which teenagers are exposed to pornography is the environment. Dr. Knight also mentioned this. For example, in Jamaica, what we call the one-room settings.
Yeah.
That affects in areas where poverty exists, which we know this is all over Jamaica. This is one of the things. So that is famously known to either accidentally cause or intentionally expose children and teenagers to sex. Also, if parents practice watching porn, then it allows for children and teens to become curious, go looking to find. They know you were watching the DVD. Either they heard you from the next room or they have seen it. Maybe they've seen something with the word SEX on it, or triple X, the X's that they put on the DVD.
It's interesting that you say that, because a lot of parents with youngsters, say between age 1 to say about 5, oftentimes think these kids are oblivious of sexual stimuli.
They are not.
And that these kids are not seeing what's happening, internalizing the sounds and visual imagery, and might want to act out these
and
things.
they in these one-room settings, as I said, either accidentally, say, for example, you think they're sleeping while they're not. Their eyes are wide open. They have taken in every act without saying a word. So you don't even know.
They just lie there.
They just lie there and watch and, okay. And we really have to accept that today is not like one time where, for example, a child who is a big woman now would have heard her mother, making the ooh-ah sounds and think that it was hurting mommy. It's not like that anymore.
You call it the ooh-ah sound. I tend to call it erotic vocalization, which basically
which persons sometimes cannot control during sex.
Yeah, in fact they can't, because the evidence now shows that when a woman in particular is having an orgasm, the conscious part of her mind literally shuts down.
Wow.
And she becomes quite primitive in her expressions.
Boy, I tell you, it is really hard.
Yeah.
Children, teenagers are becoming exposed to porn through all sorts of entertainment media, these gadgets, the music, the videos, the magazines, the voice clips, the advertisements. Wow. It is just too much for the teenagers, I believe. As you said, first time it wasn't like that. It was more like soft porn, and it was a bit more closed in, boxed in. Today it is wide open.
Absolutely. And that is where the risk is, because as Dr. Knight mentioned, they're not only watching the heterosexual activity, but they're watching other variations of sex, men having sex with men, group sex, and they're also watching bestiality and bondage
and
dangerous exposure.
Unfortunately practicing some of it. All right, we have another guest online, and he is Reverend Omar Stennett, and he's the minister at the Ocherius Church on the Rock. Now, as we know, religion and sex, they've had their relationship going on for some time. Welcome, Reverend Stennett. Good night.
Good night, Amber, and good night to Dr. Bailey.
Good night to you, sir. Welcome to IRFM.
Thank you.
All right, well, our listeners might be wondering, why do we have a minister? And we're talking about this topic of pornography and teenagers and how it affects them. And really and truly, if we admit Jamaica is a very religious society, so I think it is quite fitting that we have you online, Minister. And well, first we'll hear what you have to say, and we have a few questions for you as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, I must say that just listening to, I think, Dr. Knightley.
Yes. Dr. Knight. Dr. Sandra Knight. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think she adequately covered, the implications of pornography among our young people, the implications of it, and it's serious, and I don't think it is something that should be taken lightly, whether in the church or outside of the church culture. I believe it is wrong scripturally, and it is unhealthy for a society. It's unhealthy for relationships. What it does, we live in a society where, for example, women are marginalized to some extent in terms of leadership. And one of the things that pornography does is that it shows women as mere physical objects.
Right.
And so a man's focus coming out of a pornographic lifestyle is to see women as just breasts and sex organs. Basically, it does not try to show other ways in which a woman can be attractive in terms of her character and her intelligence and her humor. It also shows that the most important thing between man and woman is sexual intercourse.
Right.
And so when you see that, that's not how we want to treat our sisters, our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunts, and other women in the society. That's not how we want our relatives to be treated, and that's not how we should treat others.
Reverend Sennett, could you help the listeners to get a better appreciation of the role that the church can and should play in helping to groom our youngsters, to help them to overcome these challenges that they're facing?
Yes.
But I think the church has to be more proactive. Just I mean, when I was called today, for example, I had this discussion, kind of shared and asked some of these very questions with person at the church. And one of the first things that they said is that this is a discussion that we need to have at the church. And many churches have stayed away from having this sort of dialogue.
Yes.
That's true. A lot of churches are afraid of having any discussion
any form of discussion about sex.
Right.
Yes.
And the truth is that God created sex. And if your car is broken down, you take it to a mechanic. And so if sexual issues need to be fixed, you have to take it to the person who created it, God, to ask him. So the church should take the lead, I believe, in helping to develop healthy sex life in our society.
Yes.
And
go ahead.
Right. And I'll go as far as to say the church has always preached and teach abstinence to young people instead of preaching purity. The truth is that God's desire, I believe, is not for people to be virgins, it's for them to be pure. The scriptures speak about sexual immorality and sexual impurity. And so we have to start teaching people about purity, a pure mind. The doctor earlier was speaking about how it impacts their intellectual capacity when they're exposed to this kind of a thing. So what the church needs to do is to preach purity. And part of keeping your mind pure is not the focus on some things that a certain stage of your life, because that it will affect your growth in terms of your intellect and stuff. And instead of just preaching abstinence, because I mean, when somebody gets married, they can't abstain, but they can still be pure.
All right, let's talk a little bit about that, Reverend, because in this day and age, it is very hard, I'm sure, for the typical man and even woman to keep their mind off sex. Sex is everywhere. If you're watching a commercial about milk, it could be sexual. You're watching something being advertised that has nothing to do with sex, and yet the images in front of you are. And if you're going to say to your congregation, don't watch porn, you can't literally say to them, don't watch TV, and when there's a commercial break, you know, the things are there that still gets in their brain and entices them. It's very hard. That's my point. That it's very hard for persons to abstain. I would say nearly impossible, because doctors have said that human beings, we are sexual beings. As you said, God created this thing for us, and we have these natural feelings and desires for it. I find that most of the church teaches to suppress these feelings instead of dealing with them. What's your view on that?
Well, and that is why I am saying that instead of preaching abstaining, preach purity. And purity is, sex is good, it is healthy, it is right, but there's a particular context that it ought to be done in, and teach the benefits of that. Because what we're saying is that, abstain, and so what people are fighting, they're not fighting to be pure, they're fighting not to have sex.
Right.
And that is, and just the intercourse aspect, because there are other aspects of sex. For example, when I was younger, many young people were engaged in oral sex, but still say that they were virgins.
Right.
And that is impurity. And so the bigger picture is to teach impurity. And I can tell people, we have to look at it also, that what do I decide to watch? And what do I expose my family to and my children to? Based on where I have been and where I am going, is this the wisest thing to watch? Is this the wisest thing to do?
Right. One of the things that we have also seen in the churches is that with this message of abstinence, which is surely not working, we have seen where people have acted out in different inappropriate ways sexually. For example, fornicating, there's adultery, there's even sex with children coming from persons with strong religious backgrounds. So, you know, I really appreciate the fact that your message that you're sending out right now is actually for church members and persons to stay away from the things that will push them towards this kind of behavior. Instead of trying to abstain, then go the right way, which I'm sure is still, in the church, it is still that two people, a man and a woman, get married, and then that's the right time for them to engage in sex acts.
Well, Reverend said, you know, I had this discussion with a pastor on a television show a few weeks ago. We were looking at the whole relevance of pornography as a teaching tool, because one of the argument that I posited was that instructional videos can be used as appropriate teaching tool to teach youngsters who are totally ignorant of the sex act, about what to do and how to do whatever they want to do. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. The method, we may use different methods to communicate the message. At the end of the day, what is the message? And we have to find the most impactful message. All right? And so we have had persons, for example, from the Jamaica AIDS support, who, if they're going to speak about that, they will bring like condoms and models of, the sexual organs to come and teach and expose the children, of course, at an appropriate age, because here's the thing, they're going to learn, and we have to settle on this, they're going to learn somewhere. They're going to be exposed to it somewhere, either in the school, among their friends, at home, or at the church. So the church has to make a decision. Who will we allow to teach them the truth?
Yes.
And so we have to take on that responsibility. And if it means that showing the video in the context of a church where you allow them to ask the questions and so you can, and then that is done. And it may not be on a Sunday morning. It could be a weekend retreat somewhere where you speak to it. But it is important that the church, we can't shy away from it because this sex is evil, is wrong.
I must commend you once again.
In fact, I noticed you smile, DJ, because Reverend Stennett has a very liberated view. There's some of your colleagues who would frown strongly, and you actually having sessions in church to teach persons about sexuality. I mean, they believe that persons need to find out for themselves what it is all about. And as you perhaps know, oftentimes if that happens, they end up making a lot of mistakes and it causes quite a bit of frustration. One of the questions that Amber actually raised during the break was to find out from you, what's your take on a married couple actually looking at pornography?
All right. In a case like that, I'd say that it is unhealthy. It is unhealthy for your marriage because you're looking at a picture of someone else. I mean, why would I want to lust at a next woman? Because, and your definition of pornography is appropriate, that it is an erotic feeling. Mm-hmm. It stimulates an erotic feeling.
Yeah, it's meant to excite you. Yeah.
Right. And so why am I, as a married man, why would I want to be excited by the picture of a next woman? That is unfair to my wife.
We see your point, and we know, of the psychological effects. And I just want to say, I find that persons
in fact, let me say, here's what Jesus Christ said. Let's use this quickly. He says this. Moses' law said that if you commit adultery, you have sinned. But I say, if you lust at a woman in your heart, you have already committed adultery. So once I start looking at that image, and you were speaking earlier, Amber, about walking down the street. If I see you down the street and start picturing, what it would be like with you in bed, whether my wife sees or knows, it's still wrong.
It happened, right? And we did also say that sex begins in the mind. I just want to say big up to you, Rev. I got introduced to the Church on the Rock by Dr. McLegan in Montego Bay. You know who that is, right?
Right, yes,
right.
The dentist.
Right, the dentist and the minister. Big up to my friend, Dr. and Reverend McLegan. And I find that the Church on the Rock is actually very liberal and willing to be practical about religion and many topics. So I would say you're a very good choice for tonight. And I just want to ask you before you go, one definition. Is it that the church defines pornography as a sin?
Well, yeah. And I mean, again, because the question, your question is a blessing or a curse.
Right.
And so I thought about it and said, I mean, really and truly, what causes blessings come from obeying God and curses come from disobeying Him.
Right.
So to say pornography is a blessing or a curse would be inappropriate. It would be is it sin or not? And then based on you committing the act of pornography, it may have curses attached to it based on it being wrong. It is what I'd say is that it is unhealthy and it is unwise. If you're married, it is unhealthy. It's unwise to do. And sometimes life is not about right and wrong. Is this the best thing to do?
Right.
Is this the honorable thing to do? And as a teenager, as a 15-year-old, thank God I was not exposed to that. And I say that because my nature is to be an extremist, kind of really radical out there. And maybe if I were exposed to it, I would be stuck on it even today.
Yes.
Right? That's how powerful the thing is. Why would someone want to do that? I never know that parents show these things to their sons.
As you heard the doctor say. It is such a double standard.
Speak about this because no, I mean, there are reports of in our prep schools and primary schools, some of the stuff that are happening. And now we are realizing that it could be that fathers are showing their sons that this is what you're supposed to do. And say, they just think it is okay whether it's a boy or a girl.
It is really, really sad and just out of control and it's a double standard, like I said, because as Dr. Knight was saying, fathers really sad and just out of control and it's a double standard, like I said, because as Dr. Knight was saying, fathers will show their boys a man and a woman having sex and say, when you get older, when you're ready, this is what is supposed to happen. But then that same child gets exposed to other types of sex, including homosexual sex or group sex, without their permission, because their parents have opened them up to looking at sex.
You know that it is compared in the United States, for example. Let me just say this as a close. They say the effects of porn on the brain is called toxic and compared to cocaine.
Wow.
They say a prolonged exposure to pornography stimulates the preference for depictions of group sex, sodomite practices, and sexual contact with animals. So if you're exposed to pornography at a young age, you'll end up sleeping with animals. You will end up being arguing.
Well, that's a little bit extreme, but those are the possibilities. We understand.
This is from a research in 2004.
Okay, those are the possibilities.
Yeah.
Those are the implications. So that is where the curse comes in. When you open yourself to it, then the implications of it.
Yes, Pastor, I understand. In fact, in the opening remarks, we did say that the pornographic images that persons are seeing now actually oftentimes deviate significantly from regular heterosexual activity and get involved in group sex and bestiality and so on. And there are some inherent risks. I'm very pleased with the fact, though, that you have emphasized that in your churches you teach abstinence and not necessarily not purity, because abstinence seems to gain more traction for the individuals that you actually are.
So we teach purity
You teach purity. Purity. Oh, okay. You are emphasizing purity.
Because purity includes abstinence, because there's nothing that says be a virgin. It says be pure.
Right.
I see. That you are an interesting man, because I thought purity meant that you're a virgin.
No, and actually, I think those are very rare to find, Dr. Bailey. But actually, I agree with the Reverend that abstinence is not working. People are secretly having sex in the church with each other and with persons who are not in the church, and it is there and it needs to be dealt with. Thank you so much, Reverend Stennett.
You're welcome anytime, man. Have a good night and I'm enjoying the program, so I'll listen to the rest of it.
Okay.
Thank you very much indeed. That was Reverend Omar Stennett, Minister at the Otrius Church on the Rock, and that man is definitely solid as a rock.
I like the way he sounds. Indeed. All right, so we're going to take another break and come back. You love me? Well, we're not on TV, we're on radio, but we're talking about what happens on your screen and in your ears.
Okay. And that can have a profound effect on you.
Yes, as we have been discussing, this is a very intense topic. Pornography, is it a, what do you say, Doc? A blessing or a curse? Because we had kind of subtitled it like that, but you heard the minister say this.
I suppose one can always define words based on your worldview. It can be a curse, and there are some advantages to porn. I suppose since the pastor had mentioned that, perhaps I'll just mention that there are what one could call the so-called advantages.
And certainly, let's clarify, Doctor, this is not for teenagers.
Right.
For adults.
For adults, right.
Yes.
Now, there are some individuals who believe that the wide availability of pornography may, in fact, reduce crime, believe it or not, by giving potential offenders a socially acceptable way of regulating their sexuality by practicing self-sex.
Instead of raping or molesting.
Right. So that's one argument that has been posited. There's also a thought that pornography may serve as a safety valve, preventing violence against women by serving as a form of fantasy and as safe sex. So many persons actually use pornography really when they they're not involved in a committed relationship, and they use it as a stimulus for safe sex.
All right, so those are two, and then we have like a million disadvantages.
There are many disadvantages. Perhaps I'll just mention some of them. That pornography basically eroticizes and suggests domination and humiliation of women. It is harmful to female actors in particularly, and therefore a lot of female actors end up with some serious injuries and disease. I mean, if you want to watch his porn, I mean, they're subjected to some fairly rigorous and brutal sex
and
sometimes.
for extended periods, because they have to do it according to the length of the film.
Right. They also another thought that prolonged exposure to pornography could encourage irregular and abnormal sexual practices, as you mentioned, like group sex and other types of what we call paraphilia, unusual sexual practice like bondage and in our culture, men having sex with men, and it also can desensitize men and make them less responsive to female stimuli, and it can promote promiscuity, especially in teenagers, and there is actually a very important consequence of pornography, and we asked the past what you thought about watching porn in a marriage situation. It can provoke jealousy,
Of course.
and there have been instances
And cheating.
that where men actually, there have been divorces because of pornography.
Wow.
And sometimes the expectations of one partner in a relationship is modified when he sees what is going on. He anticipates that his or her partner will behave the same way,
and then it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen, and they become quite disappointed to search for that kind of ideal, which oftentimes cannot be realized. It also can create problems in terms of a loss of trust between intimate partners.
A lot. We don't even have to go any further on the negative effects. I say it's a curse, and it is something that you should just try to stay away from. There are so many negatives. I mean, the few positives, boy, them can't tender. There are other ways to prevent crime and other ways to,
There are some persons too who think that that pornography could be used as a teaching tool and it depends on how you define pornography.
Maybe the soft porn from back in the day, but not this hardcore.
I suppose, since I did say there are different types of porn. Hardcore porn is really heavy stuff. Softcore porn can be used as a teaching tool to teach persons about how to recognize it, the different the aspect of sexuality and how to do what they really want to do.
All right. We're going to open the phone lines, 974-5051, 974-5079, and 974-5043 are the numbers to call, and our toll-free number is 1-888-991-4152. Now, while we wait for our callers, Doc, let's just conclude on the topic of porn and teenagers. How do we protect our children or teens from themselves, their own curiosity, their natural instinct to, want to see more, want to know what that was, or what's that sound, or it make me feel so, me feel a little tingling, me feel a little something I get stiff. How do we help them with this?
The pastor mentioned a point about purity, which I think I can understand, because your thought processes, it does influence your behavior, and therefore what we really need to do is to protect our children from the dangers of the world. And so one needs to get involved in responsible parenting to minimize their exposure to erotic material, so that they can remain children and can enjoy a stress-free life.
All right, so you heard that, parents. Make sure you put away your adult content in places that only you have access to, and if you have cable, make sure you put on the lock on the channels that are inappropriate for teenagers and children. We have our first caller online. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Sexwise.
Yes, greetings.
Greetings.
Good night to you, sir.
You think, as the doc described it a while ago, that these people are not even conscious. As in the state that we mentioned a couple Sexwise ago about the sexual zombies. within the people. The doctor says it's not that bad. Data says it's not that bad, but we know it is that bad. You think there's any difference in the adults? Listen, you know what is happening? We've been riding on buses and seeing people. So when it's in the buses also, you know, big people have their phones.
Right.
And it's just basics on their phone, and it's like it's nothing.
And somebody over their shoulder can see that. Yes.
No, before we go any further, we wanted to address a program on sex wise.
Yes.
Like with the topic sex and privacy, or sex. Sex and privacy. We would like sex wise to organize a program with that topic.
All right, thank you for your suggestion.
No, we're not finished yet.
Go ahead.
Listen now.
Yes.
You describe it. You personally describe the situation as frightening.
Yes.
That was your words. And according, I want to use a word from our beloved Miss Lou. Wasserer. The word Wasserer. The situation is going to get like that. Wasserer, unless we deal with the root factor of this whole thing. The root factor.
What is that, caller?
The root factor. The whole, what we keep saying all the while. We keep saying that sex, see, we just had a pastor of the church on the program. We keep saying that the church and the state is responsible for the state that sex is in. When the church and state play down sex and saying marriage before sex, removing the sacredity of sex. Sex is marriage. When a man and a woman lay down and have sex, they are getting married. And every time they have sex, they are renewing their marriage vow. What the church and state has done is remove that sacredity. They put a taboo on sex and saying marriage before sex. That can go so.
And when they say marriage, they mean the legal part of it. You're talking in the sense of sex being the spiritual connection,
original marriage bond.
Right. All right.
And when the human species recognize that and apply that and acknowledge that and implement that, then you will have sex will be in its rightful order, and the sexual zombies and the sexual madness that is going on will be no more until we get to the root factor of the whole thing. Until that time, the situation is going to get worse.
Thank you so much for your
really
call.
Appreciate your contribution tonight. Okay.
All right. You know, I tend to agree with him about the bonding between the man and the woman. Actually, the Bible says a man should take unto himself a woman and call her his wife.
Okay.
No, I take it as literally meaning that. So I agree with the caller that when a man and a woman come together, most likely they have a spiritual connection, or we hope that they have a spiritual connection. They become husband and wife with this sex act.
That's an interesting spin. Never thought of it that way.
I have thought about that, and that is exactly what he said. This caller,
in fact, has been when I host a program. He comes on every night, actually.
Yes,
yeah, he does.
I've only heard him for the first time, but he's very out of the box, and so am I. I love what he just said.
Yeah, he comes on every night, and he argues about sexual zombies and sex being marriage per se. But that's interesting, Spin. You've actually entertained the thought.
Yes, I have entertained the thought before, because I think about it. Back in the day, not everybody used to have these weddings and then sign these papers that will legally bind them together. Okay. A man and a woman would live together for 20 years, 30 years, 10 years, or whatever, or lifetimes. Because we know that back in the day and in certain places like Africa and so on, it's not so taboo then. For example, if a man is going to have 5 wives, they're all aware of each other. And if a man is going to have 1 wife, then she knows that that is her husband, and she doesn't expect him to go out of the relationship.
Okay, no problem. An interesting philosophical thought. You know, he mentioned something which we need to reflect on, that even in public transports that adults are watching these videos on their smartphone.
They can't wait until they're alone, you know. They're so sexed up.
Okay, and they're exposing youngsters, and we're looking at in terms of solution. So not only responsible parenting, but adults must also be responsible and don't inadvertently expose youngsters to these images that is obviously influencing their behavior.
You know, and we had talked about the whole one-room situation. Yeah. It's not just the one-room situation. Children have walked in big houses on sex acts happening. I think people need to be responsible. Close the door with a key. You know, check on your child every half an hour or whatever, or if they're asleep and you feel confident that they're asleep, before you get all aroused and into sex while your child is standing there watching. We famously heard, it was all over social media, all over the news, about a very popular dancehall artist and his former partner, who they have a child together, and something like that happened. I'll tell you off air who it is. Okay. But this was a recent scandal, maybe about a year and something. Very popular dancehall artist, and the child was inadvertently exposed to sex under those circumstances.
What effect did it have on the child?
And she did not. The woman wasn't having sex with the child's father. It was a different man.
Ooh.
So, you know, these are things we really need to take into consideration. The type of environment that we have our children in. As you heard, Dr. Knight said, they go around. We need to do some background checks. Nothing wrong with that. Check out who your children are hanging out with. And
who they spend weekends with.
They spend time with, away from you. And boy, I don't know. I have a toddler and I feel like I'm going to be Miss Private Eye.
Yeah, you're going to have to really watch her closely.
Yes, of course, in this day and age.
Is it a girl?
It is a girl.
Congrats.
It is a girl. Thank you.
Okay.
You know, and most importantly, I have to say this again, parents, your age don't determine what you learn. Get with it.
That's an important point, because a lot of parents believe that if the child is, say, young, they really don't understand what's going on.
They understand to some point, at least. So if they can decipher even points A and B out of the alphabet situation, for example, then you need to make sure you protect them from A and B, because the rest, you know, is there. Yes, we don't want them to know before time. That's a big issue. They're knowing these things before time,
and they get confused and they become sexualized and want to act out their visual and auditory stimuli. And you did mention that they hear sounds, and so part of the discussion also would be to contain yourself, really, if you're involved in erotic experiences.
And if you're in a one-room situation or a two-room situation, anywhere the child is close by where you can wake them up with these erotic sounds, be careful, control the step. I don't know what you're going to do, put something over your mouth or something.
Yeah, well, you could also arrange, I mean,
I know.
To have sex at a time when the child is not around.
That's one of my suggestions. I think I have it here. Definitely you want to try to arrange a night with your partner where you're alone, so you don't take the risk of, you know, inadvertently exposing your child. Also, it's very important for parents and even other responsible adults, because really and truly, you know, Doc, we have to face the fact that parenting and the teaching of morals is very low in Jamaica.
Yeah, and you mentioned the whole issue of education. A lot of persons are reluctant to discuss sex at home. They expect it to be discussed at school, which it is not appropriately discussed. And so they really need to discuss sex education at home and point out the dangers of sexually transmitted diseases, teenage pregnancy, and other topics of interest, which can inform the child so that they can be better able to cope when they're faced with these images.
And we do know that not all teenagers will abstain. We have seen it. The numbers show there's young fathers nowadays, and it's always been that way, really. Teenagers, females getting pregnant. Who get them pregnant? Must be the boys.
You know, when this discussion started recently about sex education in places of safety, I noted that very few persons were looking at the data as it is. The truth is, the Jamaican boys start having sex quite early. In fact, the average age for first sex for Jamaican boys is 13 and a half years.
We had talked about this a few weeks ago.
Yeah. And the average sex for girls is about 14 or 15, even though the age of consent is 16. So a lot of parents are locked in denial in them, and they don't want to accept the fact that their children are exposed to sexual imagery and might in fact be sexually active. And so it's important to prepare them psychologically for these things by appropriate
and
education.
warn them and try to deter them as much as possible. We know that sex sells and it is everywhere, but we have to be consistent in trying to keep our children and our teenagers especially away. I think it is much easier to keep the smaller children away unless inadvertently exposed, but the teenagers, they actually have the hormones kicking and they are interested.
And so they have to be monitored and guided, so that they travel along the appropriate pathway.
Right.
Because if they are left by themselves
then,
to access whatever
lots of accidents.
Whatever media that they opt to access, then it's going to create problems.
All right, we have another caller online. Welcome to Sex Wise.
Yeah, greetings again. We was listening. It missed us. To mention it, you was talking about advertisement and sexism and everything. Even we even listened, and we didn't even heard the hue and cry.
Hello.
I think you ran out of credit. Okay, no problem.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about this, Doc, and remind our callers, or listeners rather, of the numbers to call. There's a few minutes left, 14 minutes left in the program. 974-5051, 974-5079, and 974-5043. Now, Doc, recently we have heard of incidents of sex tapes coming out of high schools. The most famous one, we carried the story here back in May last year about it, and let's just read a little bit of it. It says the police have been called in to investigate the alleged involvement of 3 female students of the Marcus Garvey Technical High School in St. Anne who are involved in sex videos that have gone viral. Now, you know that means it's on the internet.
And it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. The video showed graphic footage of 3 female students engaging in sexual encounters with each other.
Same sex,
as well as 3 males. And very disturbing indeed, because not only are they watching it, they are making their own porn with the smartphones and the gadgets that they have.
Which is now becoming a fairly regular feature.
Yeah, it recently happened again, and this is in the country area over in Hanover. I think it was just last week or the week before. It was reported in the news I saw on the TV. They had shown where the students cut out areas through the fencing, gone over in the bush. You want to see the bush them? They bush them well flat down, you know.
That to the studio?
Yeah,
a green studio.
Some green mattresses. And it was reported the security, I think it was alleged that the security guard was the one who discovered this area for sex. This rendezvous.
Okay.
And that couples, as they coupled up, girls and boys, were having sex at the same time. So 1 in this spot, 2 in this spot, 2 in this spot, 2 in that spot. And I think that is crazy. Students at school going off to a special area to have sex on the grass.
It's interesting, you know, because again, in terms of controlling students' behavior and in terms of regulating actions, the principals and the teachers have to recognize that these things can and does happen and put systems in place to prevent it. And so these children have to be controlled and guided. But we have another caller line. Caller, welcome to Sex Wise.
Hi.
Good night.
Good night to you, sir.
Good night.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Amber.
Yes.
Blessed love.
Blessed love to you too.
Yes, Amber. You sound like you can move and manage the program.
Thank you.
Can manage it in Amber.
Give thanks. And Dr. Bailey's here to help me.
Yes, Rasta. Thanks very much.
Bless up yourself, IAB.
Yeah, bless up to you, boss. Yes.
I'll be from the center, Master, you know.
Okay.
Good to hear from you.
Nothing wrong with Amber. Nothing wrong with marriage, you know. Me feel to say when a man married him beside the man, we just take along with one woman, you know.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I have nothing against marriage. I agree with marriage, but I'm saying that originally the idea of marriage, from what the gentleman was saying, is a practical way to think that when a man and a woman are together, they are naturally husband and wife.
Yeah, get you, Amber, get you. That is it.
Right. So it's okay for people to get married?
See. So it's like to say now, me have a virgin to say, we have some holy for scratches for him. Me don't know for the water.
Okay.
Maybe that's for another night.
So you, well, that might be a topic that we'll have to take up next time. This brethren is scratching on, because my advice though, if he has scratches on him and the cause can't be easily identified, you need to go and see his doctor. Let the doctor examine it, and it might be simply a parasite like scabies, or you could have picked up some bacteria from the water that is irritating the skin, and it can be treated easily. So tell him to go and see his doctor and let him and get it sorted out.
All right, thank you for calling, Jatabi.
Aye, Amber, big up yourself.
Yeah, man, and big up my St. Thomas people.
Yeah, man, Everless, man, we have a full blast when they are working, Amber.
All right, give thanks.
Aye, my brethren. Aye.
All right.
Good night, sir. Okay.
Yeah, so really we want to stress that parents be more vigilant. And pay attention to your children, what they're watching, what they're being exposed to. Talk to them. It's not always wise to be the dominator in the relationship as a parent. Sometimes you need to be the friend who the child will talk to and share things with you, because I think sometimes the approach, causes them to be afraid to say anything.
To disclose their concern.
Yes.
And of course, as you mentioned, the schools have to be also vigilant, because these children who are highly sexualized, who have watched all these interesting images on the various media at their disposal, are coming into school ready to act out some of these.
Yes.
And so the schools have to put systems in place to ensure that the aberrant behavior that we're seeing is curtailed. And so the principals and the teachers have to play an active role also in controlling these children.
And we also want to encourage other churches to get on board with the Church on the Rock. You just heard the minister say they want to have these open discussions. It is time for the church to openly speak about sex. It is happening whether you like it or not. Sex is happening with the members of the church, whether married or unmarried. And a lot of the times, Doc, they know the persons who are having sex with each other, but it is kept, it's swept under the carpet, or it's just too taboo, or they pray about it or fast about it. But praying and fasting alone, unfortunately, is not going to make sex go away from the minds of people.
It's interesting you say that, because I'm going to give a lecture on Saturday looking at the effect of sex on the mind. And they have done a lot of studies looking at the effect of sex, of lust and attraction and romance, and it affects different parts of the brain. Right. But interestingly, the area of the brain that gets all worked up when you're experiencing a spiritual moment is actually very close to the area that is aroused during sex,
And we had talked about this in a previous program, that it is partially a spiritual act between two people. I mean, it is spiritual, it's chemical, it's physical.
It is, and in fact, a lot of persons have indicated that when they actually have an intense sexual moment, the bliss for them is heavenly. So the important point though is that the church has to recognize that aberrant behavior does take place within the church itself, that a lot of their youngsters are struggling with coping with their sexuality.
The laws are so
and
strict.
they want somebody to talk to.
The church laws are so strict against sex, they need to free up the argument in the church. They have, for example, I used to go to church, this was a long time ago. A long time ago as a child. In my adult life, I have not been a church goer for many reasons.
Okay.
But I remember, for example, they would have youth night at church, which is not on Sunday. It's one of the weekdays. I think one of the weekdays should definitely be a day for discussion with the congregation about these issues which are burdening the church. It is something that is I think it's more serious than we want to admit, and we should actually do that topic, sex and religion.
I think we should. We have a call online. Caller, welcome to Sexwise.
Hello, yes.
Good night to you, sir.
Yes, how you doing?
We're fine, thanks.
One of the problems that I'm finding out is that we keep using the word sex, and nobody not thinking love no more.
Right.
So that's one of the biggest issues. Every time I hear it, it's sex. Because even when somebody said to me, "Oh, I want to have sex," I'm like, "No, I'm not into having sex. I want to make love." So when we move the sex word out the way and we put the love back into it, that might sort of change the people's attitude towards each other.
And that's one of the things with the porn. As the Reverend said, the porn minimizes the woman to a sex object. So for not good. And if people keep practicing watching these things, then they have that mindset. As soon as a man looks at a woman, the first thing he does is, strip her with his eyes. And then it goes from there,
Yeah, that's called.
Back to the love.
Yeah, I quite agree with you. In fact, a lot of men in particular are overwhelmed with passion, and for the whole experience to be gratifying, it has to also have some intimacy and some commitment to it. And a lot of youngsters, based on their dancehall culture and porn, have been socialized into thinking that sex is just a physical, that making love basically is just a physical act, devoid of intimacy. And we totally agree with you that we need to return to the whole concept of making love rather than just having sex, which for many persons is a kind of competition as who can reach the end of the race as quickly as possible. And that's something that we really need to emphasize.
Thank you for calling.
Well, my name is Naya, and I'm calling from St. Elizabeth up in Treasure Beach.
Okay, thanks so much for calling. Very valid point indeed. Like I was saying today when we were preparing the program, Doc, the society is all sexed up. It's in the music, it's in the movies, it's in, and not porn when I say movies, I mean the regular movies that people watch. Even some of the PG stuff is sexually inappropriate for children to be watching.
In fact, I'm actually very surprised these days when I see PG and 3/4 of it is basically erotic stuff.
Yes.
So the PG seem to have changed.
And even outside of PG, the G, for example, a sitcom then on a kids channel, which we won't mention the name. Just about every episode that I've ever seen, it is about a boy dating a girl or having feelings for the girl and, maybe not knowing how to express them and so on. And it is just all around too much. Sex is blowing the children's minds. Teenagers need to focus on their education, focus on extracurricular activities and other ways to burn their energy instead of focusing on sex. So really and truly, we hope that this program has contributed to assisting parents and responsible adults with dealing with the issue of porn. People get to know the computer, get to know all the gadgets, put on locks on your channels on cable, do whatever you have to at least if your child becomes exposed, it is not that you did not try.
There's one last point too that I'd like to emphasize, and that there are some web filters that are available that you can buy to help to filter out some of the more erotic stuff.
Right.
They have all kind of interesting names. They're called Net Nanny, Safe Eyes, Cyber Sitter, Cyber Patrol, Filter Pack, Net Mop, Wise Choice, and others.
All right, so
these are web filters that you can
Google these web filters.
Yeah, because this is important to emphasize is when we began the program, you mentioned that you just typed in the word sex.
And all the things that came up.
Everything inappropriate came up on the screen. If you had the filters, it would be programmed to filter out some of the more inappropriate material.
Right. And another thing as well, final point before we close. I have been on the internet and we were not searching anything to do with sex. And yet on the side, you're watching one big picture on one side, say for example on a tablet. On the right hand on YouTube, all the other options come up, and if you scroll, you see all other things, including sexual things that have nothing to do with what you typed in your search.
And that will pique your curiosity and cause you to explore.
All right, well, I think we have almost exhausted this topic, and we really hope that it has a positive impact on our listeners. Want to thank you very much. Want to say thanks to our two guests tonight. We had Dr. Knight.
Dr. Sandra Knight.
We had Dr. Sandra Knight,
chair of the National Family Planning Board.
Right, and then we had Reverend Omar Stennett from the Oterius Church on the Rock. Thank you both for coming on the program, and to our callers, thank you as well. Thanks to our producer Ken Cole and our technical operator DJ Brian, and of course to the lovely Dr. Alveston Bailey.
You're too kind. It's always a pleasure being here. And of course, it's even a greater pleasure to share the microphone with you.
Thank you very much for coming. So that's our program tonight, of course, our topic. You can go on and do some more research for yourselves and see how you can assist teenagers in abstaining from watching porn, and even adults as well. You heard tonight how damaging it can be to your relationships. Here's hoping the program will be of benefit to you. Thanks for listening. My name is Amber, and that was Sex Wise for tonight. We'll catch you another time. Peace and love.
We are such a